Now, I've talked about control of an organization through controlling the people, or the means with which peoples and behaviors are controlled, pretty much independent of the organization. In this talk, I'd like to deal with control through what's becoming called organization enablers. Enablers, you can think of it in terms of, well, here's the infrastructure in the organization. Take the people out, and what have you got left? You've got the physical environment. You've got the IT systems. You have the business processes. You have the cultural beliefs in the organization. You have the organization structure. All of that sort of stuff. That exists pretty much independent of the people. Now, these things enable the organization to carry out its business. Recently, there's been some attention paid to these enablers, largely coming from COBIT, COBIT being the control objectives for IT. They deal with governance and management control. The formal definition of enablers are factors that individually and collectively influence whether something will work. In this case, governance and management over enterprise IT. Any enterprise must always consider an interconnected set of enablers. That is, each enabler needs the input of other enablers to be fully effective, like processes need information, organization structure needs skills and behaviors, and so on. Each enabler delivers output to the benefit of other enablers. For example, processes deliver information, skills and behavior make processes efficient, and so on. Now, I've taken as an example the COBIT 5 collection of enablers. I've taken that because it's readily available and is reasonably well thought out. It's a pretty good structure of enablers, actually. So COBIT 5 is a business framework for governance and management of enterprise IT. That's what it started out at. It's now, COBIT 5 is the version 5 of it, so they're starting to get through. Now, aside from the enablers, COBIT 5 employs what they call a goals cascade. So they start at the highest level, the strategic level, with the strategic goals, and they cascade these down through the organization to determine what should be at each level of the organization, down to the level of the enablers. And the whole point is to figure out how the enabler ought to be configured or tailored or work or function in order for this to serve the ultimate goals of it all. Mapping the goals is not a trivial exercise. It's probably something that an organization hasn't previously done in any considered fashion. It's quite a sizable exercise. However, it probably will be done a bit more in future. Now, in that diagram you can see the COBIT 5 enterprise enablers. In the center stripe there you see the organization principles, policies and frameworks. So this is at the highest level. What are the policies that guide the organization? What are the principles or overall goals or something that drive the organization? And what are the frameworks that are put in place at the highest level? Then if you go from the top clockwise, you have processes, organization structures, culture, ethics and behavior, people skills and competencies, services, infrastructure, applications and information. You could argue whether this is the only collection classification, or you could divide it up differently or something. You can argue this for some time. COBIT 5 has come to the conclusion that these 6, with the 7th in the middle, are sufficient and are a good way of doing things. And I agree with them. It's sufficient. What I'm particularly pleased about is that it separates them into areas that you can focus on with some concern. So, for example, processes deals with processes. Don't try to mix in skills with the processes. They're two separate things, and you can treat those quite separately. Now, the benefits of the COBIT 5 goals cascade as I found in another area, and the area was in process improvement and process tailoring. In order to tailor the processes, you need to be able to decompose the goals from the highest level down to the level that affect each process. And if you can decompose them in some sensible fashion, some fashion where you can actually trace from the highest level down to the effect, you'll probably get an advantage. You'll probably get it more right. In COBIT, this is called the Goals Cascade, and it does that quite deliberately. The Goals Cascade is important because it allows the definition of priorities for implementation, improvement and assurance of governance of enterprise IT based on strategic objectives of the enterprise and the related risk. Now in practice, the Goals Cascade, 1, defines relevant and tangible goals and objectives at various levels of responsibility. This is quite important. It filters the knowledge base of COBIT 5 based on enterprise goals to extract relevant guidance for inclusion in specific implementation, improvement or assurance projects. And it clearly identifies and communicates how the enablers are important to achieve the enterprise goals. Now, each of those things is quite important to have articulated in the organization. The importance is that in the absence of some known breakdown or decomposition of the goals, people will substitute their own goals and their own agendas. And this seems to be pretty much what happens at the moment. As a consequence, it kind of dissipates the efforts of the organization. So if you can map all the goals from the highest level, the strategic level, down through to each enabler, you're more likely to get an organization that's marching in the same direction, trying to achieve the same goals, and you'll maximize the outputs. The COBIT 5 enablers interact with the organizational system. That is, you won't get one enabler sitting there on its own, independent. They're not independent. They interact with each other, and they interact with the entire system. The enablers can be tailored to achieve the cascaded goals. So the processes, for example, I know from my own experience that processes are usually tailorable. The degree to which you can take care, or the rigor of any particular technique within the process, or usually the rigor with which you assess the output of the process, or the completion of the process, each can be tailored to suit the organization goals. The organization culture, maybe it's overall less tailorable, but nevertheless it's still able to be influenced usually by senior management. The knowledge and skills, well, you can tailor that pretty easily. Obviously you need the appropriate knowledge and skills, but the depth to which you need it, and sometimes exactly what skills you need can be quite subtle. The immediate and technical applicable skills, that's fairly easy, but less easy to determine are things like communication skills, or team working skills, or problem solving skills. How much of those do you need where, and to what degree do you need them all? So these sometimes more subtle skills are things that you need. Information is another one that can be quite interesting to deal with. Now, in software systems and in organization control, the systems enablers provide a focus for control. That is, you can look at how the system and the organization operates, and you can look at these enablers and determine that here is a place where you can have some influence. So you can for example, improve the processes. and you improve the processes to serve the goals that it's supposed to improve. You can improve the supply of information, the type of information, or the timeliness, the relevance, the quality of the information. You can improve the skills, knowledge and skills, and you can improve the policies. So these enablers do provide a focus with which you can tune or alter the action or behavior of an organization. Now, we're talking about organizations, but for us, the relevance is we're talking about a quality management system, and there are enablers for the quality management system that you can tune. Now, in general, what you have to do is you determine the relationships between the enablers and see which has more effect, and you determine the relationship through the goals. Now, what effect does changing one enabler have on the other enablers? That sometimes can be reasonably subtle, but it's a point to be considered. I don't have a particular answer because it depends on the circumstances, but it's something that you can usefully examine. The next point you can deal with, as has previously been mentioned, is what goal ought those enablers be trying to achieve. Normally it'll be a collection of goals. And how can you alter the enabler to better achieve those goals? And of course, I mean, you can have local optimization for a global global disadvantage, and that often happens in, say, factories where you speed up one machine at the detriment of the entire system. So when you're trying to improve these enablers, you have to be mindful that it's the entire operation of the entire system that matters, not the operation of a specific enabler. So, for example, there's not much point in trying to improve the processes beyond the level at which the information would support them, or trying to improve them contrary to what the organization's belief systems, what the organization culture will cope with. So that is a brief introduction to system enablers. It was or has been introduced most visibly in COBIT 5. It seems to be a very useful thing to think about, because it enables us to look at the operation of the system in the absence of people. Yes, you put the people in, they complete it, and they help. And yes, people can alter the way the system operates. But largely, we put a system in place to support people and to minimize the effect of varying performance. So if you like to think of it in terms of, well, here's the factory with all the bits and pieces in the factory. How do we set this factory up to get the best performance out of it? In quality management, well, the enablers are going to be the processes for quality management. Obviously, the information that flows through the quality management system, the policy of quality management, the knowledge and skills of the people concerned, the organization culture toward quality. I mean, if the organization culture is, well, just chip it, then trying to achieve very rigorous quality probably isn't going to work that well until you address that problem of organization culture. The organization structure, if the quality manager, for example, reports to a project manager, then it's probably not going to go that far. So if you might want to consider the organization structure of it all, and obviously the infrastructure that's available to you. So the tools and applications that you have available to use within this quality management system. So there you are. We have enablers for systems that help to achieve the organization's goals.